to everybody that has tuned in so far, that has arrived on time for this session. It's very much appreciated. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Dave Berry and I work here in the International Development Office at Nottingham Trent University. I am very much a secondary act today because the star of the show is going to be my colleague Wallace Murdoch. Wallace is our Head of International and Academic Engagement for Nottingham School of Art and Design. And Wallace today will be introducing you to a presentation which is about how to develop a successful portfolio. The chat box for this call is open, so if you would like to ask any questions, please do pop your questions in the chat box and we will come to those at the end of the session during the Q&A. So we aren't ignoring you if you're asking the questions at the start, and we will come to them at the end. Finally, if you do have any questions at the end of the session, I will also put my personal email address in the chat box, and you're most welcome to reach out to me directly with any queries that you might have. And of course, we are also joined by Daphne. So Daphne is Jingham. And so Jingham is one of NTU's long established partners in Taiwan. And Daphne has many, many, many years of experience of helping students to send their applications to Nottingham Trent. So I'm very sure that if any of you would like assistance with your future application to the university, Daphne is the lady to go to. She'll be really, really happy to assist you. Okay, well, that's my introduction over. I'm going to hand over to you now to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. As David mentioned, my name is Wallace Murdoch. I'm one of the heads in the School of Art and Design at Nottingham Trent University School of Art and Design, and I'm head of international and academic engagement. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to cover kind of general overview of the School of Art and Design, portfolio requirements. I'm going to talk a little bit about the understanding of the design process and how that should be included within the portfolio, examples of undergraduate and postgraduate portfolios, and then we have the opportunity for any questions. So please put the questions in the sidebar if you have any, or you can always ask them at the end. So Nottingham School of Art and Design is part of Nottingham Trent University. That's located within the city of Nottingham. As a city in the UK, we're a fairly small city. We only have roughly 330,000 people, but 70,000 of those are students. So we're a very student-focused city. One of our key focuses as an institution is also looking at employability for our students and developing our courses so that students really understand their future employability opportunities. So we have one of the largest employability teams within the UK. We're also one of the oldest schools of art and design, and we were actually established in 1843. And the School of Art and Design is currently in the top 100 QS rankings. We are a very global university. 19% of our students are international. That might be slightly up or down depending on every year's recruitment. And we have students from over 160 different nationalities. So we're a very diverse community. The School of Art and Design has over 175 years of history and a strong reputation in the UK and globally, with roughly 5,000 students across our creative community. We cover most subject areas, as you can see on the slide, and we're very much focused on interdisciplinary learning. So we have optional and collaborative modules to broaden students' creative skill sets. We do provide placement opportunities and work-like opportunities, where we work with a variety of different companies and organisations, both in the UK and globally. And effectively, our mission is very much about combining rigorous academic teaching with industry-focused hands-on learning. That is a key focus of what we actually do. Within the school, we have 3 departments. We have fashion, design and digital arts, and music and events. The majority of students from Taiwan focus on the fashion and design and digital arts areas of our portfolio. One of our key advantages as an institution is very much our resource. Our campus resource is extensive. This is our design and digital arts building that we've opened just over a year ago. And we actually have the latest state-of-the-art digital technology within this building, as you can actually see. This little video just shows you the kind of work students actually produce within that building. So although it's very technology and future focused, we also focus on collaboration from the production space. We also do traditional print, animation, illustration, make images from visual effects, and design and TV. We have virtual production, a range of other courses. So this building is very much looking at designing visual arts for the future. Our students are very much about designing for the future. We've also got a very established fashion and textile resource, both in terms of fashion, in terms of the production and making, and textiles in terms of production and making. But we also have fashion management and marketing courses that I'll talk a little bit briefly at the end. And we've also got a wide range of music and events resource. This is a recent addition to our portfolio within the School of Art and Design. And the real advantage of these programs for anybody interested is that these students are very much applied. So as you can see from the slide there, we have our own music venue and we have our own esports arena. So students on these courses very much get hands-on experience, both in terms of the creative aspects, but also the technical aspects of the music and events industry. And we cover from music business, music production, content creation, a wide range of subjects in that particular area. So what are we about at Nottingham School of Art and Design? We're very much about all these things. We're about ideas, we're about process, we're about problem solving. Collaboration is a key focus of what we do within our school. Creativity, opinions, discussion, reflection, experimentation, critical thinking and risk-taking are really important within our school and within our philosophy. And support for students is key, and individuality is what we really focus on. And these are delivered in a number of different ways through tutorials, workshops, etc., depending on the subject that you actually study. As I talked about earlier, a key focus within our school is our links with industry and employability. We have an employability manager in each of our schools, and they support students both at undergraduate and postgraduate, and many of our students will actually do an industry-focused project or a placement depending on their particular area of development. So undergraduate level, we actually provide work-like experience for our students, so that they have within their programme of learning the opportunity to have a mandatory work-like experience. And we also introduce that at a lesser degree at postgraduate level. The dedicated employment support team are there both for UK and international students. And the university provides career support for 3 years after graduation. So students have the opportunity to engage with our central support team 3 years after they've graduated. We also, as part of our commitment to students, have a wide variety of both internal and external showcases of student work, so that they can actually network with external organisations and showcase their work at every level of study. So why do we ask for a portfolio? And a portfolio is really so that you can actually demonstrate your creative and technical skills. And it's a great way to showcase your passion for the subject area that you're interested in, and for us to learn more about you, and to make sure that you've got the required creative and technical skills for the appropriate level of entry. So the portfolio is a really important part of the application process. Your portfolio should reflect your individual creative practice and what motivates your interest in your specialist subject area. You should show us how you develop concepts and ideas, and use these concepts and ideas to inform your creative development and final outcomes. And I'm going to show you a number of different approaches to developing a portfolio so that you can see real examples of what we mean. You should demonstrate your ability to translate these ideas from concept through development to fully resolved work. And we really want to see your personal working methodology, and that's very important at postgraduate level. So things to consider in your portfolio. Include initial creative ideas such as sketch and ideas books that demonstrate visual research from a breadth of different sources. Show development work that illustrates how you've progressed from initial ideas to final outcomes. Evidence your individual research methodology, and that demonstrates to us your creative problem-solving skills. Present final project work that is fully resolved and demonstrates a professional level of outcome. Ensure your portfolio is well organised and visually clear and effectively communicates to the intended audience. We have a number of admissions tutors who see a lot of portfolios, so it is really, really important that that portfolio is structured well and organised, and that it highlights innovative original work that shows the depth of thought and engagement with your specialist subject area. So what to include? As I've said, examples of personal interest and creative ideas, and that through sketchbooks and ideas books, because a lot of students don't include that initial development work, but that's very, very important to showcase where your ideas have come from. Evidence of how your concepts have informed development and final product application. The documentation of your research methodology and working process, and that's really important, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by the design process. Work that demonstrates both your technical knowledge and understanding of your subject, and again, fully resolved outcomes that's a professional standard of work, and also indications that you understand the professional context of your work. And what we mean by that is what's happening in your particular subject area, whether it be fashion, product design, graphic design, and how that impacts on you, and also an understanding of who you think your potential customer may be for the work that you produce. So we cover a wide range of subjects, as I've said, within our school, but the key focus from Taiwanese students are fashion design, textile design, product design, although not in my school. These portfolio guidelines would include the kind of same types of information that you would include in a product design portfolio. Visual communication, and that includes graphic design, illustration, and animation, and then interior architecture and design. And again, much of the information that I'll provide to you would be applicable for all these subject areas. So demonstrating an understanding of the design process and communicating in your portfolio is really important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we mean by the design process and how you need to communicate that. So the design process is very much about visible thinking. Most creative subjects are about thinking visually, and how we have ideas, test, explore, experiment, and reference these visually. And that's how we articulate the design process. So the design process isn't particularly linear, certainly at the beginning. It's very much about uncertainty. It's very much about insight. So at the research and concept development stage, wide variety of different ideas, wide variety of different sources that you will draw information from. Then as you actually work through to actually solving design, there'll be much greater clarity and focus within your work. So design is very much about a problem. So there's a brief, and the design is about the solution to that brief. So we provide our students with lots of different briefs, and then through a systematic approach to design, they will actually come up with a solution. And the key thing here is if you don't understand and contextualize the problem, then you can't create a suitable solution. And that's all part of the process. So design is very much about research, reflection, development, and then the final design application. But it's never linear, and it's completely interconnected. So it's really important that you do research, you reflect, you develop, and then you actually design. What we encourage all our students to do within their portfolio when they're developing ideas is not just to look at other designers' work as an inspiration, but to go out and research and look past design into science, technology, trends, human behaviour, because you never actually create anything unique and new by following the path that someone else has followed. It's important that you do look at other designers, that's a part of the process, but look beyond that at other things that may inspire and excite you as a creative individual. And these are just a range of questions. I'm not going to go through them, but questions that challenge you, questions that challenge the way that you think. You know, and a lot of these questions are very relevant to the world that we actually sort of live in. But designers are very much impacted by the global world that we live in. And currently we are living in an environment that's very much about change. So therefore, we get all our students to really question what they do and ask questions of their own individual creativity. And it's very much about turning these questions into a voyage of discovery as part of the process. So again, it's about collecting a wide range of everything, you know, become an experiment, you know, and really challenge a wide variety of different ideas within those early stages of the design process. And take all of your research and then condense it into meaningful insights, but still keep it very wide. So visual thinking and depth of discovery are really important. Those early stages, it's really, really important that you actually demonstrate your ideas and demonstrate that visual thinking, whatever subject that you've actually chosen to major in. And that visual thinking and that documentation of that can be whatever way is appropriate for you. And also personal reflection. I mean, this is just an example of the type of reflection that we would ask one of our students to do. But it's very much about them reflecting on their journey and their creative practice, but also that's articulated within their initial concepts and ideas. And that broad approach through experimentation is really important. Explore ideas, test and challenge these ideas. Again, things like mind mapping is a really good way to do it. As you can see, some students will actually include more narrative than others, and that's really up to you in terms of how you choose to develop. So really, we start by the research process, which is really a key part of what we do. We then look at strategy, and then we actually include that experimentation in what it is that we actually do. So research, strategy, and experimentation are part of that process. So we very much talk about what, why, and how. That's very much a key part of what we do. We will ask all our students why a lot of the time, why they've selected a particular process, why they've chosen a particular fabric, why they've made a particular decision. But it's very important that students understand what they're doing, why they're doing, and how they're going to solve that design problem. And then that links back to research, reflection, development, and design. So that gives you a very quick overview of what we talk about when we talk about the design process. And then that leads to final design outcomes. Those final design outcomes are very different depending on the major that you select. We've got here a fashion student, a textile student, and a product student. And here we've got an architecture student, a graphic design student, and a textile student. And again, the outcomes are very different. And that's really important because that's what we want to see within student work. We want them to go through that systematic process of design. But what we want to do is we want them to show us their process. And that's really important at postgraduate level. So demonstrating your individual creative process and personal working methodology in your portfolio is incredibly important to us. And what I'm going to do here is just show you a very short project where a student has actually included different aspects within their portfolio. So the first part is to include initial creative ideas, sketchbooks, ideas books that demonstrate visual research from a breadth of different sources. So this is a fashion student, and there's a clear sort of visual identity here. The student has actually used quite a wide range of visual sources. They've used a set of keywords also to describe what they're actually sort of doing within that initial visual research. They've then gone on to develop that concept through the visual research and development by including both primary and secondary research. And again, in your visual research, it's fine to use both primary and secondary research, depending on the particular project that you're actually undertaking. Also, we always ask our students, it's very good for students to understand who exactly they're designing for. In this case, this is a fashion student. He's identified a particular individual who would actually wear his product, but it may be a market level, it may be an organisation. But it's really important as part of that design process to understand who and why you're designing and who that's for, because that can really inform the decisions that you make. It can inform the nature of what it is that you actually design. So understanding your customer or who the final outcome may be, if it's in a gallery or a store, it's very, very important to understand that. It's also important in the portfolio to show your development work that illustrates how you've progressed from those initial concepts that we looked at to the final outcome. Again, this is the same student. So again, he's actually looking, in this case, at the manipulation of images, and then he's actually projected those onto a dress stand to actually create manipulation of ideas. He's then actually started that development by looking at different fabric manipulation and different fabric selection. And then he started to look at the garment development stages, where he's actually started by looking at two-dimensional work and then progressing that into three-dimensional work. And again, that's very, very important for students who are interested in fashion design, product design, that they, or interior architecture, that they show that ability to translate ideas from 2D to 3D. Because some students can think very well two-dimensionally, but they find it more challenging to work in 3 dimensions. The students looked at, in this case, a very limited colour palette, and that colour palette in relation to swatches. And then we also ask students to evidence their research methodology and their problem solving. And that's very much about taking all those early ideas and development and then actually producing, in this case, a final set of garments or a final collection. The graphic design, that may be a range of different ideas, and you'll see in some of the portfolios that I'm going to show you later how students have developed that. Final garment specification, and then from this 2D to 3D, the student will then present the final project work, whether that's a two-dimensional graphic design outcome, whether it's a three-dimensional graphic fashion design product, or whether it is a product design. And in this case, it was a final garment that the student then demonstrated through a particular photo shoot. So that's just a snapshot of the creative process. What I'm going to talk a little bit here now is just about our master's program, because a lot of our students from Taiwan do study at master's level. And the key thing about our master's program is very much that the modular structure provides opportunities for students to work across the School of Art and Design, and it's very much focused on interdisciplinary thinking and collaboration. We have optional modules both at undergraduate and postgraduate that enable students to bespoke their learning experience, and it's very much geared towards individual students' professional future in terms of where they want to go. International initiatives are embedded into the curriculum to support integration and adjustment of international students into the new learning environment. And that creates a real global community. That's obviously available at undergraduate, but undergraduate students have got much longer to actually integrate it into the process. But for postgraduate students, that's really developed within the curriculum to sort of ensure that students are integrated. And design responsibility is a key part of what we do at NTU. Sustainability in practice is crucial within our university's thinking, because we are the second most sustainable university in the world. So what's the distinctive features, particularly about our masters? They provide a diverse platform for creative thinking and design practice that challenges and drives the future of the creative industries right across our provision. It's an opportunity to think and do creatively, very much as agents of change, to be innovative, risk takers, and to explore and solve problems, and that's really important. That personalised approach to practice and theory that takes account of social, political, environmental and technological issues from both a local and a global context. So we really want our master's students in particular to be agents of change. A critical approach to notions of progress, encouraging a deeper understanding of both traditional and digital practice, because although we have the latest technology, many students will actually choose traditional process as part of their practice, and we actually embrace both sort of traditional and digital, but very much looking at the wider technological developments that are available sort of globally. So what I'm going to do next is actually show you a range of different portfolios so you can see how different students have actually approached it. We're going to start by an MA illustration portfolio, and these are portfolios from students that have submitted those as part of their application process to the School of Art and Design. And I've done this deliberately so that you can see the different approaches that students have taken for each subject. So we start here by an illustration student. Here what you can see is actually on this page a wide range of different approaches in terms of the students' inspiration, their initial sketches. They've done a mind map there, they're developing the concept, and then they've produced a final series of illustration outcomes from that particular idea. But what they've done here is condensed within that initial page a range of different ideas, and then they've produced the final outcome. And they've done that because they're actually demonstrating different projects through the actual portfolio. So we don't just want to see one project, we want to see a range of different projects. So this student from that early development work has actually produced a range of different illustrations, but then started and communicated the second project, again with a slightly different approach to the working methodology, and they produced a book that is actually very different to that initial outcome. Again, in the second project, you can see similarities here, and you can see a working methodology for this student starting to develop. But again, it's questioning the outcome in a very different way. But the illustration outcomes again here, you can see that process and development. And then again, the final outcome is very different from the first two projects. And again, you can see how the work has actually developed. So you can see that the student has actually developed a particular approach. They've communicated effectively through the narrative, how they're developing and working through this particular project. And again, a good range of different work is evident, and we can see a range of skill there within this portfolio, and we can see that this student is absolutely appropriate for master's level study because of the level of work and the level of critical inquiry that's actually evidenced in this particular portfolio. And we're going to go to a textile student now who's approached it in a very, very different way because of the nature of what they do, because obviously the student is very much at translating ideas from 2D to 3D. And again, not all textile students would apply this on a garment. They may only make the fabric, but this particular student is really interested in that application from 2D to 3D on a particular garment. So they've shown the development of their initial sort of ideas, and then they've looked at how they can translate those ideas across a range of different projects. You can see the initial inspiration here, looking at the 2D to 3D application, fabric development. And again, for this student, the fabric development is a key part of that process. The next project, again, is then taking that and applying it in a slightly different way and exploring it within a three-dimensional context. Again, some ideas for another project. And again, you can see the 2D to 3D application. The student has shown the dyeing process here and the manipulation of fabric and the fabric application. So again, a very different process to the illustration student. But again, we can see that process. We can see the stages of development that the students has gone through. And again, we can see that level of critical inquiry that results in a successful final outcome. And the example I've chosen is a filmmaking student who actually studied fine art. So this student actually started looking very much at two-dimensional work, and then actually became interested because she actually undertook a moving image workshop and then started to develop that through a series of short moving image pieces. So she did a couple of Vimeos to start with, but was really interested in that 2D to 3D work. So again, this portfolio is a combination of both film and Vimeo, but also it's 2D to 3D application. So she's continued with her art practice. She's looked at how she can actually sort of use that and create sort of video and Vimeo from that, and then produced sort of final projections. So again, you can see how a student can go from 2D to 3D, but their fine art practice can lead them to be an appropriate student for final year sort of filmmaking. And then graphic communication portfolio, we get a lot of students interested in graphic communication. And again, this is one of our own students, but he was really interested in film, art and music, and he studied illustration, but he's very interested in actually moving into final year in graphic communication. So again, there's a wide variety of different projects here. So he made a short movie as part of his project, again demonstrating that storyboarding process, the development of the project, the kind of articles that he was actually interested in. He's developed some short movie posters, again as part of that process. So he's producing work that's both 2D and 3D as part of the portfolio. He's looking at desktop movie examples. And then he also, as part of his final year, developed a picture book, again demonstrating his research and development work. And then a whole series of drawing that he then brought into Photoshop and actually developed them further using a range of different text, and then produced once again a final book for his work. So again, the student is really focused on image and minimal text. You can see that he's come from an illustration background, and then he produced some AI motion generated work, which again he's gone through a whole series process to developed ideas, and then he's actually produced a final sort of piece of visual work that is very much audio reactive. So again, you can see a real breadth within that portfolio, a real breadth of inquiry from that particular student. And again, he's very much networked as part of his undergraduate study to prepare him for postgraduate work. I'm going to show you some undergraduate portfolios here so that you can see the difference, but also for students that are interested in undergraduate, the level is very different, but the understanding of process is quite similar. So we're going to look at a fashion and textile student, and again this is a student who has undertaken a foundation programme and then produced that work for first year undergraduate study. Now this student actually applied for fashion design but ended up studying fashion knitwear design, and she ended up studying fashion knitwear design because she was really interested in both fashion and fabric manipulation. So again, you can see the text that she's looked at, you can see the experimentation with process, the different textile approaches in terms of embellishment that she's included within the work. She's also looked at that broader context of how that could be applied within a final garment application. She's looked at different processes. She's also looked at different designers and how different designers have actually used that work. She's also looked at the application within final degree collections. And then, as you can see, a wide and broad range of work. But she's also shown that application of those textile processes from 2D to 3D. Now, obviously, what you can see here is this student hasn't developed a final garment because they're actually applying for first year undergraduate level study. So you can see the difference in the levels here. And then again, the students actually looked at the broader context of the industry and looked at trend forecasting. And then some final ideas. Now again, if we move from fashion or fashion knitwear to something like graphic design, a very different portfolio. And again, for undergraduate graphic design, drawing is a really important part of that process. So most students for undergraduate graphic design would really focus on demonstrating their drawing, colour application, using a wide variety of different media to show that skill set. And then they would start to apply those ideas into a final design project. At undergraduate level for first year, we want to see general art and design skills, and then we want to see at least one project that is focused on the major that you want to specialise in. So in this case, the student is actually looking at a branding project. So they're taking their initial drawings, then looking at kind of illustration, exploring different types of illustration, in this case vector illustration, and then looking at the relationship between type and image. So you can see how the student's taken a drawing and then starting to develop it within that design process. They start to stylize by exploring different brands, different colors. They've looked at digital typography and then looking at pop art and then applying and exploring their ideas within that context. And then these are some of the initial ideas that the student has actually used in terms of the final poster design. So there's 5 different approaches here using image and text in a very, very different way. Because as we know, graphic design very much is that exploration of image and text. The students also looked at logo design that is appropriate. They've then actually looked at that through type and image in vector illustration, looking at photo montage, 3D design using Blender, some other projects that the students undertaken, and then this is the final outcome. So within that process, you can actually see that the student has actually understood the design process. They've gone from initial concepts and ideas, they've worked through that development stage, and then they've actually refined their ideas in the final product outcome. And that is about that design process understanding. And we want to see that creative journey. We want to see that level of critical inquiry, that level of engagement. And we want to see your working process and your working methodology within that. That's absolutely crucial in terms of what we look for within a portfolio. You can see here, again, some other drawing that the student has actually included as a final part of what they've done. So again, a very different approach at undergraduate and postgraduate. Undergraduates are very much about demonstrating the fundamentals of the subject. I'm going to talk a little bit now, just for the last couple of minutes, on our fashion management, marketing and branding courses, just for those students who may be considering both design or one of these courses. So we actually offer 4 programs within our university. We've got international fashion management, luxury fashion brand management, fashion marketing and fashion communication. And the main thing you can see here is the more dense block of black is where they're much more business strategy and management focused, and where they're more pink striped, that's where they're much more creative, aesthetic and conceptual. So we offer the MA Fashion Communication, which is much more creative, and these students look at how we use communication within the fashion industry. The MA Fashion Marketing very much looks at how we actually sort of use fashion as a consumer behaviour tool to look at how we develop marketing strategies within a fashion context. The International Fashion Management is the most broadly based course, which very much looks at the architecture and the big box picture of the fashion industry. And then the International Luxury Fashion Brand Management really looks at the luxury area. So students who may have studied design can go on to any one of these courses. The key thing is that you include within your statement of purpose why you want to go into fashion, but you don't need to have studied fashion or design to enter one of these courses. We've had business students, we've had psychology students. The key thing is that your personal statement communicates why. So this is just a kind of penultimate slide, and these are just some common portfolio mistakes. Students quite often put too much of the same type of work within their portfolio. And as you can see from the examples that I showed you, there was a really good range of work within there. All finished pieces are now working. We really want to see that creative journey. So it's really important that you demonstrate that journey, concept, development, final application. And when I say copying from others, what I mean is, as creatives, we're all inspired by other people. You just need to make sure that actually you can be inspired by someone, but don't emulate their work too much, because it could end up looking as if you're copying what they do. And the last but one bullet point, focused on aesthetic and not content. And what I mean by that is keep your portfolio submission clear, understandable. We know that you can do lots of really clever things with PowerPoint presentations, but our admissions tutors see lots of portfolios, so make it clear, make it understandable, make it easy for them to actually read. And it's really important that your portfolio is not boring or formulaic. If you go to a school like you're in, it's important that every student demonstrates a portfolio that's individual to them, and we can see their individuality within that. So that's the end of the presentation, and thank you all very much for watching, and we will take some questions.
Thank you so much as always for that, Wallace. That was fantastic. Wallace, we've got a question from Daphne below. It says it says some students are interested in architecture programs. Could you please kindly introduce a little bit for the architecture portfolio? Daphne, just to be clear, this is a program that's outside of Wallace's faculty. What I have done is I've shared a link to our portfolio guidance, which includes specific information about architecture and also interior architecture and design as well. Wallace, is there anything you could possibly touch upon at all, or would it be best to refer to that school for that?
I think certainly refer to those guidelines, but I think the key thing is for those programs, they also want to see that creative journey. So they want to see concepts and ideas, they want to see your development process, and then your final application. Obviously for architecture and interior architecture, drawing is really crucial. So showing good drawing skills, both technical and freehand, are very, very important. But the principles are very much the same. we would want to see 2D to 3D application, because again, it's a three-dimensional subject. So we'd want to see that you can actually think from a drawing to a final three-dimensional object. Now, that may be not that you've obviously built a building, but it may be so that you can demonstrate you understand that, and it might be through a computer software or whatever. Certainly consult the architecture guidelines, but the principles are very much the same. Ideas, development, and final application, and demonstrating that creative journey. And that creative journey is really important for postgraduate students, because it really enables us to see that you've got both the creative and the technical skills to move from undergraduate to postgraduate study. So the guidelines and the design process is slightly different for each subject, but they're very, very similar in terms of that creative journey is very important. Now, I know that in some countries, the journey is less important. So for some countries, they are much more inclined to ask you to focus on the final outcome. And we do want to see the final outcome. But what that journey shows us is your level of critical inquiry, your level of engagement with your subject, and your level of understanding with your subject. Because you may have produced something that is very simple, but your journey may have been very complex. There may have been a really very strong level of critical engagement with a particular topic. So that journey is very important. So it's really important to get the balance across the portfolio, because we do want to see final outcomes. We do want to see that you can actually resolve the design problem, but we really want to see that journey, and that's applicable for all creative subjects.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Wallace. It looks like Daphne is typing, potentially has another question, so we'll just wait for that to come through. And of course, if anybody else has any questions, you're also welcome to type those. If you'd prefer to ask the questions in a private setting, and you can email me on dave.berry@ntu.ac.uk. My email address is just in the chat box. And Daphne's asked about, yeah, she's just asked a question about
how many projects would you suggest? That's really up to the individual student. So there's no set amount of projects you should include. What to do is make sure that you're showing the range of your abilities. And if you've got two projects that are quite similar, you don't necessarily need to include them both unless you think they're really important. But we would say show breadth, show a range of skills. So at postgraduate level, students will probably have done at least 2 or 3, 4 projects anyway. So you should show that within the portfolio. And you can show projects that weren't the most successful, but she'll show a different approach that you've taken, because as long as you've actually resolved the project, then that's fine. I mean, don't show work that you really don't think worked, but ultimately show a range of work. So I'm always reluctant to say how many, because I think that's up to the individual student, and that is part of the editing process. We don't want to see every single project you've done, but obviously we want to see that depth within the projects that you have done, and projects that show a good range. If you think about the illustration portfolio, that student had maybe 4 projects in there, 5 projects, and they communicated different projects, but you could really see an individual working process there. You could see the way that the student actually worked through projects that were quite systematic, and that really demonstrated that student's understanding of the design process, that student's critical thinking. Although that critical thinking and that engagement with each project was quite different, you could really see that the student had developed a methodology that they'd actually used, but was actually applying it in a different way to produce a different outcome.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Wallace. And it looks like Daphne's typing another question, so we'll just wait for that. So she said it usually has 20 to 25 pages of PDF, right?
I would just check that with actually some are less than that. I mean, at undergraduate, we ask for less. So I would look to the particular course and make sure that you fit within those guidelines. Again, as you saw from certain projects, you can include quite a bit of information on the same page. So again, it's not a single page for each one. Again, check with each individual course to make sure that actually you're submitting. I mean, if you think about applying to, a BA photography course, photographers take hundreds of photographs. So they have to edit that. So again, it's really up to the individual what they choose to show and how they choose to show it. But consult the guidelines from each institution you're applying to, because they will be slightly different. It's also really important to sort of ensure that you actually put it in the correct digital format, because again, different universities may be slightly different in terms of the digital requirements. As I say, some countries tend to be more focused on the outcome than the journey. So it's always worthwhile making sure that you actually consult the institutions that you're applying to make sure that you're providing the right format for what they sort of do. And just because it might say X, Y, and Z, if you don't think you need to submit that amount of work, that's up to you. I would suggest that you don't under-represent yourself there. Don't be too selective, because it is important that you actually do show that range, and you don't want to disadvantage yourself. But equally, don't make the images so small that we can't see them, because you put so much on the page. And again, that aesthetic sensibility is part of the decision-making process. It's just like, don't include too much narrative, but include the narrative that's appropriate, because you may have done a project that really needs to be described in a particular way. But that is all part of the selection process, because creative students, part of our review of who they are is how they present their portfolio, the way they present it, how they select what they put in that portfolio. But we get students who present in a range of different ways. We get students who come from different backgrounds that actually work within the subject. And again, you don't have to have studied the subject necessarily to make the application. But what you do need to do is you need to present a portfolio where we can see the potential that you can actually reach the level you're applying for within that subject area. Some students have got work experience that has enabled them to develop the skills they require. So we very much look at the creative and the technical skills and look at those in a portfolio and determine the suitability for the entry level from that portfolio and the accompanying statement.
Thank you again, Wallace. That's really, really helpful advice. Any more questions? Anyone else that would like to ask any questions in the chat box? Daphne, if you could ask anybody that's physically present in the room before we wrap up.
Okay.
Doesn't look like we have any more typing.
What to say is we're always happy to look at portfolios. So if you've kind of got an interim portfolio, you're not quite sure, that portfolio can be forwarded to Dave, and then he'll forward it to the school, and we'll actually have a look at it to give you some portfolio advice. But the important thing for us is to ensure that you've got the right skill set to actually be able to enter at the level that you're actually entering. In some cases, students just haven't included the development work, or they haven't included the information that we actually need. So if you need portfolio advice, we're happy to review your portfolio. If there's a few students, we're happy to jump on a call with a student and actually talk them through the work. But it is important that you get your portfolio right, but you don't see the portfolio as an obstacle, because for creative students, you probably got the information. You probably just need to sort of frame it in a way that's appropriate. So I always say, don't see the portfolio as an obstacle. Don't see it as a problem. It's just a part of the application process that creative students have to go through, just like our music students have to send a video in. And it's just for us to make sure that you're at the right level for what we require, and that so that you will actually be able to undertake the course of study you're applying for.
And thank you again, Wallace. Well, we're coming towards the end of the session, so just one final call out for any more questions. And again, if you would prefer to ask the questions privately, you are very welcome to send me an email, or of course you can speak to Daphne, and Daphne can contact me on your behalf. I'm sure she'll be very happy to help with that. Daphne's typing. We might have one more, Wallace. And it's just a thank you. No problem, Daphne. Thank you very much for helping us to organise this session today. And thank you again to all of the students that have tuned in to listen to Wallace's presentation. Please do keep in touch if there's anything that we can help with. But thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you. And please remember, no question is too crazy. In our exam, we ask lots of questions and we've kind of heard them all before. So, please feel free to ask the question because we want to make sure that you're quite comfortable that the course is right for you and it can actually deliver what you want to achieve in terms of your personal creative development. So thank you all for listening and goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yo,